In October 2014, I started using literal profit maximization instead of the least cost method. In 2023, among 55 Israeli dairy farms, we ranked first in the most important metric, yield-based income per unit of feeding cost. In other words, we achieved the highest return on investment in feeding costs. For my agricultural engineering thesis, I visited nearly 200 Israeli dairy farms in the past. Now, I am returning to Israel with the goal of bringing my data-driven approach to every dairy farm, farm by farm. I've waited 10 years, but I can't wait any longer. I want to make Aliyah. Are you a nutritionist? If your client asks 1,000 other nutritionists, every single one of them will want to change the user limits you created, and your settings will face countless too much or too little critiques. No one would leave your previous decisions unchanged. There is only one exception in the world who does not criticize the feeds you included or your user limits, and that is me. That is why you do not need to fear me. I believe that nutritionists are necessary. To clarify and to show that even with this position, I belong to a small minority, I will use an example. Let us assume the minimum value for corn in the ration formulation is 3 kilograms, and the maximum value is 5 kilograms. If someone claims that any option, such as 3, 4, or 5 kilograms, produces exactly the same amount of milk, fat, and protein within the user limits, they are essentially saying that nutritionists are not needed. Why would nutritionists be necessary in their view if there is no difference within broad limits, meaning the farmer could adjust the maximum to 3.5 kilograms? But if there are millions of yield combinations within the given user limits, and the least cost solution always determines the most efficient production, we would then have to assume that the cow's physiology depends solely on feed prices. How ridiculous would that be? If the price of corn changes by 1 shekel, and because of this, the amount of corn decreases from 4 kilograms to 3 kilograms, then without the price change, 4 kilograms would have been optimal for the cows. While with the change, 3 kilograms is the ideal amount. I do not believe this, neither based on cow data nor on combinatorial principles. When you set the user limits and run the least cost method, the software does not consider anything other than feed prices. That is, it has no information about how corn, silage, NDF, and so on influence milk, fat, and protein production, and as a result, what yields would occur. The software has zero information about the cow and zero information about the market prices of milk, fat, and protein. Zero. Yet you trust it? If we ran ration formulation on a philosopher's computer using Excel solver, we would get exactly the same result as what a nutritionist gets in Israel, because Excel solver also asks for no information about the cow. The biggest contradiction in dairy farming: no one would pass the animal nutrition exam at university if they claim that, for example, every premix or concentrate contributes the same way to milk, fat, and protein yields as, for instance, the byproducts of ozem or other feeds. However, since the 1970s, universities have been teaching the least cost solution in ration formulation, which mathematically works exactly as if every feed contributes equally to the yields. This is because in the science of optimization, the algorithms treat the factors we don't consider as if they carry equal weight. User limits and weights in optimization are two different things and must not be confused. In short, the least cost method would not pass the animal nutrition exam. How many thousands of ration formulations have you carried out using the least cost method? You also know feed prices with 100% accuracy. Could you, with all this experience and knowledge, solve a cost minimization problem manually by changing the user limits? Of course not. It is impossible. So, why would we be able to solve profit maximization without software suitable for maximizing, especially when we do not know the contributions of feeds and nutrients to yields the way we know their prices? If you are invited to work abroad and asked to reduce the cost of rations, would you accept that the farmer knows the local prices better than you? Or would you say that it does not matter who knows the prices, the shadow price is the only effective method to reduce ration costs? Exactly the same principle applies to shadow milk, shadow profit, and so on, which I have already developed. Without these, the attempt to achieve better results is as successful as trying to reduce ration costs using prices alone without shadow prices. Does experience help? If there are 10 feeds and 20 nutrients in the ration formulation, let us ask how many ways the user limits could be adjusted if we only consider the three directions: increase, decrease, or leave unchanged. Here is the shocking reality. There are 205,891,132,094,649 combinations, but only one is the best. What does this mean? Even if a nutritionist has 100,000 ration-related experiences, this knowledge is as insignificant compared to the above number as 1 millimeter compared to the distance from Tel Aviv to Budapest. In other words, there has never been a case where two identical rations existed, except when rerunning the same solution. Never. This means every modification results in a ration that has never existed and for which no one has any experience. This is why, when my cow-focused software provides a different solution among the user limits or a cost change results in a different solution, the former case cannot be considered risky. Never. If experiments are needed in the former case, then experiments are also needed in the latter case because both result in a ration that has never existed. At Hazoria Kibbutz, out of 32 dairy farms, the best yield-based income per feeding cost is achieved. In other words, their cows convert feed costs into profit most efficiently. This is precisely what the software has been doing since 2014, maximizing profit. Is this success a coincidence? Hazoria is the only one among the 32 farms where least cost solutions are not used, meaning the ration is always more expensive than what other farms' software would produce. A more expensive ration always works against profit, so would Hazoria outperform the other farms even more if they used the other software and they had cheaper rations? Some have claimed the stereotype that Hazoria has always been good at generating profit. Until 2003, Hazoria did indeed have the lowest ECM production in Israel because of cheap feed. However, everything has since changed. They no longer use cheap feed. By 2023, 10 other farms in the region produced lower ECM, yet they could not achieve better efficiency than Hazoria. I am bringing the message to Israeli dairy farms that from 2025, stereotypes must be set aside. There is cow data, and decisions must be made based on the data because the cows tell their story through the data. Since I represent data-driven decision-making, I will visit Israeli dairy farms as an entirely independent consultant. I will welcome any collaboration, but I represent only the interests of dairy farms and dairy cows, free from corporate influence. The results at Hazoria Kibbutz show that a dairy farm with 300 cows loses approximately 800,000 shekels per year if only costs are considered. Across kibbutzim, this results in a loss of 204 million shekels annually. In Moshavim, it causes a loss of 105 million shekels. This means Israel loses 849,000 shekels every single day. That's why I cannot wait any longer. Let us meet in Israel.